The bow sticks are polished, and now it's time for fitting the bow hair. There's one little job that I didn't mention before. If the holes you've drilled have been clean, there's nothing else to do here. But one little tip that I often do is just to clean up this hole, especially where the varnish is gone. And also I want to make sure that the bow hair goes over this hole with nothing breaking. So if there's any sharpness of this edge, you can either sand it away with a round kneaded file, or you can do this, which is to make sure the channel's nice and centered. I'm just going to put a very faint, with the scalpel, a very faint mark either side of the hole. It's just what I want to do is have a nice straight path for the hair to go over. I take a 3mm chisel. This is just an extra, you don't have to do this, and for many years I never did this, and so all I'm going to do is use the chisel to make sure that there is a bit of a channel. And we're not actually going down, this is like barely a millimeter. We're just trying to cut away the edge a little bit so the edge is less harsh going into the hole. You can also do this with a square file or with a round nose file as well. But what we're just trying to do is to make sure there's no sharp edges. Trying to show you on camera is quite difficult because I'm having to hold the stick near the camera. We're just removing any sharp edges. That's all. Okay, then we just repeat on all the other edges. The next stage is to take our bow hair. This is one hank of Mongolian black horsehair supplied for violin bows. Now you can use white, you can use black, it's up to you, or another colour. This has been pre-selected to be even about the same thickness and size, not necessarily the same colour. Sometimes you get some brown or some white mixed in there as well. But the first thing to do is to divide up the hair into 2 equal amounts for both bows that you're doing. Now I'm aiming for about 80 hairs for each bow, 80 to 100 hairs. So normally one of these, it's normally over 200 hairs in a bow, in a hank of hair, normally over 200, sometimes more. So you want to make sure, I'd aim for 100 if you can, but anything either side of that is absolutely fine. I say these bows keep working with the little 20 or 25, 30 hairs even. So, but for a soprano, alto, or even the smaller tenor instruments, 80 to 100 hairs is going to be absolutely fine. And what I normally do is take some sort of backdrop where I can count it and just spend my time counting the hairs. Okay, so I've counted up 100 hairs on this side. I'm now going to count hopefully another 100 hairs on this side. And any hairs that are left over, what I then do is divide them up if there's hairs left over, or if I need to subtract any, I'll subtract any so that each side has a similar number of hair. Okay, it's 15. Okay, so we now have them divided into half. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to damp the end. What we want to do is tie a simple knot, but we want it to hold together. It can sometimes help twisting a little bit. It's hard to do this under a camera. Okay, we're going to tie a simple overhand knot, basic knot, and pull this tight. Trying to preserve the round shape of the hair. You add a tiny bit of super glue on the end of the knot and on the knot itself. Not too much, but just enough to hold it secure, basically sealing the hair. You need to set that aside, let that set to dry. Cut off the hair, set aside to dry. And in the meantime, we come back to the rest of the hair. Again, we're going to wet the end. Tie an overhand knot. I use a bit of tape on the end. This just helps me to keep it round. You kind of need to hold it under tension for a second while you apply the super glue. You just apply it to the knot and you apply it to the loose end. But you need to hold that under tension, let it dry. You see the gloss of the super glue. Then what we need to do is slightly damp the bow hair. I do that by using a bowl of water. This is just cold water with a tiny drop of detergent in, washing up liquid detergent, just a tiny drop. And we just damp this down, and we make sure it needs to be damp. We don't need it to be wringing wet, but it makes it a lot easier for combing out. And then we take our comb, and we're going to comb the hair out. Use the wider end of the comb if there's a lot of tangles to untangle. We're trying to get this straight so that all the hair is straight. You need the hair to be straight before you put it on the bow. Okay, and with the hair straight now, you can put it on the bow. So you put one end on. So you've got it on one side. You can pull down to this side. The first thing we need to do is to comb it through. So we've already detangled it. Now what we need to do, what we're aiming for, is when we sight down the bow, so the hair is as straight as we can get it. This is before we do the tying stage. So this does make it quite challenging before we tie any knots. At the same time, we need to make sure the bow is going to be under tension when it's tied. And it has to bone just slightly more than it's without breaking the bow, of course, which is always very challenging. So when you know you've got the hair straight, when you put the hair through it and it's perfectly goes all the way down, so you know the hair is absolutely straight. Now you have to tie a knot, which is, this is the tricky part, and might need an extra pair of hands to do this. You need to hold the bow at slight tension, and you need to tie a knot that's about 1 centimetre below where the hole is. So the hole on the other end, you have to do a knot that's just 1 centimetre below that. Now this is where you may have to re-wet the hair a couple of times to do this correctly. I normally have to do about 4 times before I get the knot exactly where I want it. The good news is with the hair, you can normally untangle it and retie the knot a few times, especially while it's been wet, so it makes it a little bit easier. So you do the overhand knot, pull it tight, and you have to create a little the bow under tension. You want the knot to be just about 1 centimetre below, just under ½ inch below the hole. You may find with your stick, it will now depend on your stick. Some sticks are really bendy and you have to do it more. And you'll know because it will just be too loose. When this is done right, the bow will be under, this hair will be under tension, and then you know you've got it right. But then the hard thing is you have to do the second bow and try and match the tension. If it's from the same piece of wood, that makes it a lot easier. But sometimes you have to vary the amount of hair to get the same amount of tension. Okay, so I've got it 1 centimetre below. I'm not applying any glue at this point. I'm just going to test this out. Now to fit it is very tricky. Okay, so keep the bow hair in place. You're going to put the stick against your feet. And you're going to try and bend the bow with your hand. This is where all the pre-bending comes in useful. And the tricky bit now is to get it into the slot in one go without you losing the straightness. So keeping it on your feet away from you because the bow can split. You're going to get it in that slot with the wood bent. Gradually tease it in. Okay, it's in. There we go. It's in. Check the straightness of the bow. Check the hairs all straight. This is quite a stiff piece of wood. Often this wood is not as stiff, and the bow will be wider. This is the right amount of tension on this bow. That's one bow down. Now you have to do the other one so that they have a similar feel and tension to them. Usually with the same piece of stick, it'll be the same amount of bow. Now this stick is in tension, so this will hold whatever humidity you've got. This bow should keep its tension. With the hair dry, take a piece of tape on the end. Again, we're just trying to keep it nice and straight. Take our super glue. Try not to get it on the stick, but we're just getting the super glue on there. That's pretty much it. We need to leave this to dry naturally now. With the super glue dry, you can then take a sharp pair of scissors and cut off the hair, leaving a centimetre nice and cleanly. To use our bows, we have to apply rosin. This is whichever rosin you're going to use. What you can do when you've got a new bow is to take a small amount of rosin. In this example, I'm going to break a tiny bit off with either a scalpel or this is a dark rosin. It's sort of a green colour. It can be clear. It can be whatever rosin you have. Any violin or cello rosin should be suitable for this. What we need to do is close the rosin between two sheets of paper. And then what we need to do is to take something to roll it, a pen, or I'm going to use a glue stick. And what this is doing is turning the rosin into powder, very fine powder. Something left with this kind of powder. You can do this a couple of times just to make sure it's fully ground up. The final stage is to take the rosin powder and insert it over, close the piece of paper, and we're just going to gradually work our way along the bow. Now with a black hair you can see exactly where the rosin has gone. Obviously you don't want this amount of rosin to stay loose on the bow, but you're just trying to charge up the rosin onto the hair. And there will be lots of waste, and you need to tap the bow to get the waste off. Make sure the rosin goes all the way up to the end. And this is a lot easier than just rubbing the... Okay, here, so. Apologies for the sound. It's working. Okay, and before you play, you will still use a piece of rosin on your bow. But you're putting a small amount at this point. Okay, so that's charged up. And I will shake it off. I won't leave it fully charged up. You need to repeat it. Exactly the same again.